Hi, my Savage Leaders. It is Keisha Harvey, your CEO of Savage Leadership. It is Sunday, November 20, no, actually November 30th. Time is moving quickly. I just wanted to stop in. If you know me, you know that Sunday is one of my favorite days of the week because I get to go into the house of the Lord, which is, part of my belief system, heavily faith based, and really what's behind my Savage Leadership Framework. One of the very important parts of our development as leaders is to develop spiritually. And as we are nearing the end of the year, there are a lot of people, leaders included, we are not exclusive to this, where we're feeling in crisis. There's a lot of conflict happening. The economy is poor. People are struggling financially. And there's just a lot of things going on that we did not expect as 2025 came into existence. We are now preparing to go out in 2026. And a lot of people are taking inventory of the year and really sometimes feeling discouraged or unsure as to what the year is to come, which impacts all of us, but it impacts you, especially the leader. Right. And so we are needing in these times where we're living in perilous and challenging times to be able to lead people through moments of crisis. Right. A lot of times we want to think about business separate as a separate entity from emotions and stressors and things related to people, but it really is um, part of the same person. Right. If you are leading an individual and they're having personal stressors, it's going to impact their professional environment. We as leaders are not excluded, right? We are human beings. We have things happening in our lives that are stressful, things with our family. The holidays are here. All of you know I'm a licensed therapist as well as a leadership coach. And one of the things many of my clients are struggling with is just going home to their families or having families into their homes. And I've seen just a huge rate of individuals that are saying, you know what? I'm good by myself this holiday. I don't need the drama. I don't want to interact with my family, which really isn't a good place for us to be as as people part of a family. As leaders, we need each other, and people are choosing more often than not to be by themselves in peace and quiet. And don't get me wrong, right? We need our moments, and if we're going into an environment that's going to cause us stress, then we might need to make the best decision and deciding not to go into that environment. But in general, it is indicative of how people are feeling and struggling as 2025 comes to an end. I was in service this morning. Shout out to Dream Center Church of Atlanta, my Bishop Murphy and Danielle Murphy. And we had a guest preacher, and she was preaching from Matthew 4. And I talked before about the Job leader. This was a little bit more of a continuation of that, but it was about when Jesus was in the wilderness and how the devil tempted him in the wilderness after fasting for 40 days. And what she was preaching about was that is the best time when we feel like our body is physiologically weak, that we go into a spiritual place that strengthens us. And a lot of times we think crisis comes from the point of suffering or that we're being punished for something that we did. But when you're spiritually led, it means that you are at your strongest point, actually, where God steps in and he gives you the strength and he develops you because you go through hard times, not as a punishment, but as a development and as a growth. The message really sat with me because last year, February of 2025, I was suddenly terminated from a position that I had poured my blood, sweat, and tears into. And all of you know, I've talked about this before. I worked there for 7 years and really sacrificed everything for the company. And in the moment, in the immediate moment, it might have jolted me kind of out of shock, but I also immediately felt a freedom. Right. And I started kind of in this wilderness experience feeling liberated. And I know that doesn't really match for most people, but it makes sense spiritually that sometimes God will release us from an environment that is no longer good for us, that is toxic for us. And he gives us the opportunity to rely on him and to gain our strength through him. And we move into our next chapter. My leadership coaching business, my Savage Framework business, is about the next chapter in my life. It's about the next chapter for many of you as leaders. It's about the next place that God has called me to sit in. And sometimes it is difficult. I wrestle with this myself of how do I deal with my faith in a sense, or how do I undergird my faith in the middle of a business transition. And sometimes we tend to feel like it's wrong, right? Or like they don't belong together, but it is the very essence of how I'm here. It's the very essence as a part of my I'm a Savage framework. We're talking about our emotions. We're talking about our mental state. We're talking about how we handle stress, but we're also talking about our spirituality. Regardless of what you believe in, it undergirds how we function, how we think, how do we recover in the midst of crisis. It is important for you as leaders to know how to recover from crisis, even if it's your personal crisis or crisis in your business, because we don't get to just say, you know what, I'm not going to lead. Forget about it. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not going to lead anybody. We are responsible as leaders to continue to be able to lead in the midst of crisis, which means you need to know what you believe in, right? What is your belief system and how does that strengthen you as a leader? I can tell you for sure that my wilderness experience last year was so unexpected, so shocking, and sometimes the thought of it itself still brings up quite a bit of emotions related to it. But I also know who I believe in, right? I know where my faith lies, and I know that nothing happens happenstance in my life. And so I accept that and I walk in it. Not that it's not a struggle sometimes, but it undergirds my responsibility and the things that I know that I need to do as a leader, the lives that I'm supposed to touch and transform, the people that need to hear my voice. And so I'm talking to you, the Job leader. I'm talking to you, the leader that is struggling to lead in crisis. I'm talking to you, the leader that needs to lead, but also feels like you're drowning and suffering on your own. You're not by yourself. I invite you to not only subscribe to my YouTube channel, but also to be a part of my leadership framework, because it is a very important framework that was birthed out of trouble. It was birthed out of struggle and a wilderness experience. And it's important, right? This is the next chapter. This is the next level of your life that undergirds who you are, what you need, and how do you get to the next level as a leader? How do you continue to lead people successfully and make your leadership transformational, not just something you're doing day to day or going through the motions? If you're a leader, your leader means something. It's supposed to mean something. And so some of us have lost that. We're not sure where to go with it at this point. And so, if that's the case, join us, join the leadership group. It's the I'm a Savage Leadership Framework. I'm going to make sure the link is in the posting of this video, and I can't wait to meet you. Have a fantastic Sunday.